Joshua Alatis. Thank you so much for joining me today on Cook's Table. This is really a privilege to have you and privilege to have connected with you once and then for you to say yes to this with a quick text or an email, whatever I did. But glad to have you here today. Glad to jump in.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
So I would love to start off with, as I do with all my guests, just with giving you a chance to kind of introduce yourself to the audience and um, really just kind of give an idea of what your journey has been to this point, who you are, where you're from, and then kind of that career journey. If you want to give us a taste of it, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I grew up in the Midwest and then came to Virginia for school. And then in school, I had a professor that did a lot of ERP consulting back in the day, had his own company, all this stuff. And he was the one who, like, we would talk for hours after class about business, about this industry, about different projects he worked on back in the day. I mean, he had projects with the Air Force tracking F-35 parts all over the world, and it was just really interesting stuff he would be doing. So he was the expert on all that stuff. And then it happened that the way he taught his classes was very hands on. Like, how would you use what we learned to help a local company? And the company he picked for one of the classes I was in, I ran into the CEO of that company at some event and he's like, "Hey, let's get coffee." And so I got coffee with this guy and I was like, "Hey, might as well give him my pitch, right?" So I gave him my pitch and he goes, "Great, bring in a team this summer and let's do that." And it was that sentence of bringing a team this summer that I was thinking, hey, hire me as an intern. And he said, bring in a team this summer. So I ended up hiring that professor and a couple, my roommate and another guy. And we went in and did the project for him. And I really didn't have it on my radar to start a business or any of this stuff. But that guy was like, hey, come in, but come in with your own team. So I was like, well, I guess I got to figure this out. So that professor just mentored me that summer on how this stuff works, how to think with it. So professional journey in a lot of this, I realized all the different internships, jobs, experiences, I have done this same role, but in just different ways. And so then bringing it into my own company and my own team, doing this stuff of how to make people's processes more efficient and using tools to do that. It was just all of that. It was just in a different format. And so it was just a crazy thing that I had not planned on, but that's the story of how I got into it. And then we got more clients. And Andrew, you asked about AI and all that. That first summer, ChatGPT had not come out. So I was paying this professor a ton of money to do a bunch of integral coding for data analytics stuff we were doing for them. And he was doing all the technical coding and I was paying him a lot for that. Then that fall comes out, ChatGPT gets released. And the next summer I had an intern doing that same, if not more detailed coding. And I was paying him intern prices and he was writing better code because he was just using Claude at that point. So I had a
Unreal.
taste before the AI world, but then everything else since then has been using all the tools that we have on hand for our stuff. So
Wow. Wow. Okay. So your title officially, I don't know that you said that, but you're the founder of 616 Solutions, which is this company that implements ERP solutions for companies. Is that correct?
yep.
Yep. Okay. Okay. Wow, what a journey, and I'm sure we'll get into some of this, just like the unexpected nature of that as well. But I mean, have you gone back and talked to your first client about his expectations that first meeting, or what even his reflections maybe on that first meeting of when you guys got coffee, what he saw in you, and then what led him to make the decision to be like, yeah, you should come in and you should be a contractor instead of an intern, you know?
I really haven't because the story of how that went was that was a billion-dollar company.
Okay.
And that guy then put us to his IT team, and we worked with their IT team for years at that point. And so we kind
Mhm.
of didn't interact much with the CEO on that level. He just kind of brought us
Right.
in, started off, and as most of those visionary executives do, they just kind of
Right.
let us do our thing and went on to it. So I've never had that conversation. I would be very curious about how that worked out, but it
Uh-huh.
definitely wasn't anything that I had planned for, made happen. It was just a providential
Wow.
connection, path
Yeah.
crossing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you had to guess, like, what was the spark of the main selling point that he took away from the conversation that was like, I know I need this, like this is something that'd be super valuable. I mean, without betraying confidence, I guess, based on client confidentiality, if there is or whatever, what do you think that was, other than you just being a great guy and that kind of thing.
I think the thing that he was looking for was different perspective.
Okay.
And when you're running such a big organization across multiple different countries and places, visibility is super important, and so having a special team that has outside perspective on this stuff that can kinda give reporting and say, "Hey, this is what's going on," gives him more visibility into his own organization that you're not gonna get even if you hire someone to do that inside of the organization. So,
Totally.
I think that's what he was going for, and I think we're definitely able to give that to him, and that's what I've seen as well, is as a consultant, there is that perspective that you're never gonna get as someone inside the organization,
Yep.
and you provide that value, and part of your biggest value is, "I don't work here, so I can really help you by looking at what you're doing and asking why." And you just will never think to ask why because you just do it every day. So,
I love that. That makes total sense. Yeah. Okay. So sounds like your entrepreneurial journey, at least at that particular moment, was a little bit, surprising and kind of a shock to you. Were there any chapters before that in, when you were growing up in high school, early college, where you at least could see rumblings of, an entrepreneurial future, or did it really just kind of hit you out of the blue in this moment?
I think it started to come up when I got into my first semester of engineering, and I realized I don't like math.
Okay.
And I realized this could be a problem. And then I realized I like people, I like strategy, I like a lot of process stuff. So I was like, I'll switch to business or something. Um, but I didn't do that. I did the engineering and it ended up being all the difference because that professor was an engineering professor. But doing the business stuff is what I like. I tell my team if I'm doing something technical, it means we're all doing something wrong. So
Sure. Sure. Wow. Um, what was your upbringing like in terms of like what did your parents do? Do you have a history of, business people in your family, entrepreneurial people in your family? I'm always curious, in your current role as you reflect on what you love to do now and what you've excelled at with your business. Do you think that's nature or nurture for you?
I think it's a bit of both. My grandfather on my dad's side was a CPA and also owned a bunch of different companies. So he
Okay.
was like he passed away but when I was very young, but I heard all these like legendary stories. So there was that legendary side of business that I never personally saw, but I heard the stories of.
Hmm.
And then a lot of my uncles and family were doing different business side hustles and ventures, so it was around that a lot. But then a lot of people in my family also had an engineering background. So my mom had an industrial engineering background, my aunt, my other aunt, my uncle. Um, they had that type of engineering, which is the kind that I ended up doing. And so I think it's that combination of just trying things and seeing and figuring out the business and the strategy side of it, combined with the process engineering background that it makes sense that I ended up where I ended up in a lot of ways.
Totally. Yeah. My old the company that I worked at just prior to going out on my own, the CEO of that company, co-founder, was and had an engineering background as well. And the way he ran his company and the way he built his company was so you could just tell, he thinks like an engineer, and a lot of the ways he was able to effectively build processes and procedures and build a well-oiled machine in many ways, at the place that I worked at before, was just his brain worked like that, and it's a beautiful thing, and it translates surprisingly translates, I guess, for someone who didn't really think about engineering and business kind of going together. But it does translate very well, it seems like. So, it seems like your story is a testament to that as well. Um, do you think now on the flip side, when you think about entrepreneurship and kind of your journey the last few years, you said what year did you start the current
I
company?
started in 2022.
2022. Okay, so as you've reflected on the last 4 or so years, what about entrepreneurship and kind of the journey that you're in keeps you in it? What about it appeals to you? When it gets hard and the going gets tough, which I know it does, as an entrepreneur myself. It's like, what is your favorite thing about entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think for me, the thing that I've realized is I like building things, not like physical things, but systems, processes, strategies.
Mm,
And every job I've had before that ended up doing that for the person I was working for. And I didn't realize it. Like,
okay.
um, I worked at decontaminating N95 masks during COVID. And we were so bored because they didn't have their logistics together that I ended up just running an experiment with the people around me that proved we could reduce our cycle time by a certain percentage because we were just so bored out of our minds. And then we the chain up to like the corporate central command. They updated all of their policy and procedures over the 400 sites in the country because of our experiment. And we just did it because we were bored.
Right.
So for me, it's like, I think this way and I do this out of like, I need something interesting. And so part of it is if I don't do this, I end up doing this because I'm bored.
Yeah. Yeah.
I enjoy the building of systems. I enjoy making people's lives better. I enjoy like just strategically making things work for people.
Are you a decision tree guy? Do you like decision trees? I don't know if you know what that means, but
They're
uh,
fascinating, and in industrial engineering, we have whole classes on game theory and decision analysis. So we go
okay.
into the math deeply of all those things. So I'm
Hmm.
familiar with them. I think the principles are helpful, but I don't practically like use them day to day. But I think the
Yeah.
principles are interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if I guess when I say decision trees, I actually don't mean that I'm like I don't know if that's like an official term. Sorry if anyone's out there and listening and knows that is like an official term that is a whole class is written behind it or whatever. I'm no engineer. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I will say when it comes to like when I think decision tree, I think about flow charts too, and kind of like the you know the if this then that, you can go two different ways and then you kind of maybe reach a dead end or you reach a point where there's another decision and there's another decision after that. And um, I've noticed that that's a pattern for my own in my own brain of how I kind of process things. And um, I don't know, it's been pointed out by others around me as well, and I think I have some similar tendencies to what you're describing, which is cool. So um, yeah, we might have to nerd out on that between us a little bit more at some point from a personality standpoint. But that's really cool. You obviously mentioned that as hardwiring, as a portion of your hardwiring, just the way that you think. Um, are there any other like lessons about your gifting, your talents, hardwiring that you would point to as things you've learned along the way of this entrepreneurial journey that make you successful? Obviously you've got your process mentality, you've got your engineering background. What else? Is there anything else that comes to mind?
I think it's just great people around you and the providence of God and a lot of this just opening up things in the right moment at the right time. And you're like, I don't know why I was doing this. And then suddenly it all makes sense. And some
Mm,
of these things you're like, still have no idea. So hopefully someday I'll have that moment where it makes sense.
mhm.
But I would, yeah, definitely those two things are the other key components because you can
Sure.
work and work and work and never be at the right place at the right time, or you do nothing and stand on the right street corner and it all changes in a minute. So,
Yeah, yeah. That's true. There's some truth to that for sure. Are you familiar with Simon Sinek?
yeah.
Okay. So I've been impacted by his book Start with Why. Actually, also actually dating back to the company that I mentioned earlier that I had worked at prior to my own venture. But yeah, it just kind of frames up um, a good question to ask, and he. I think I'm always super curious to hear what people's, especially entrepreneurs, what their motivations are behind what they do. So, how would you answer that? What is your why? Maybe what gets you out of the bed in the morning? Um, yeah,
Yeah. For me and for the company, because at this point, those value statements are very intertwined.
sure.
Um, is bringing things into their full potential. So that's for our
Okay.
client side of things. We want them to be spending time and be as effective as possible in whatever industry that they're in
Mm,
and cut down on anything that's stopping them from being all that they could be. And then I also apply that internally on the team. How can we get each person to be all that they can be? And so on both sides of that, I've got so many clients that were running crazy systems that where they were spending probably 80 to 90% of their time just keeping track of what was happening and trying to make sure that nothing fell through and then things keep falling through. And now they're spending 90% of their time just doing whatever it is they're in business to do and only
mm,
10% to 5% on the admin side of things, which is amazing. And then on the other side of things, I've had people that started with me that they've only had jobs at taco shops and I was their first like real career experience. And by the time that they're grown up in this stuff, they're leading their own client projects. They have teams of I mean, we've had some people that have led teams of like up to 10 people, and that was their first experience was working at a taco shop, and just being able to help them become all of that has been a lot of fun. So that's kind of what I'm looking for is the process has to do that. And so whatever I'm doing, I'm kind of measuring it against that why.
Mm,
Is it accomplishing that why? So
totally makes sense. Yeah, that's great. I love that. I also resonate with that as well. That's cool. Where do you think that comes from? Just a desire to see things blossom into their full potential, for you.
I think that everyone is created for specific purposes and they have a wiring for what they were created for. And I
Mm,
think that that process of figuring out what your identity is and what you're supposed to be doing is very important. I think Jamie Winship is an amazing author on that concept. And so I
mm,
probably spent a couple years wrestling through that process before starting the business, before any of this stuff. And then I came to, hey, this is what I do, and then all of these things that have come after that have just been like, "Oh, yeah, this is me walking in what I'm supposed to be doing." But I
mm.
think it takes intentional you've gotta seek it out because everyone ends up somewhere, but few people end up somewhere on purpose. Again, it's the asking the why, but I think people don't ask the question before the why is, "What am I created for?" that will then give me the why I'm doing this.
Yeah, that's good. I'm I'm not familiar with Jamie Winship. What does he write?
Yeah, so he has a organization called the Identity Exchange, and he has a
Okay.
couple different books and videos and podcasts where he's just talking about what it looks like to discern who you were created to be,
Mm,
and then how that looks in day to day practical life. And so his book, I remember I went through it when I was flying, I think, from, like, DC to LA, and so I just read his whole book and was writing this stuff down at what I was getting and journaling this stuff. So I was on a journey, I was on another type of journey at the same time.
wow.
Um, but just having he gives really good language to just really understand, "Okay, this is who I'm supposed to be," and when you know that, it makes it so much easier to look at a situation or an opportunity and be like, "Oh, yeah, that doesn't line up. Nope." And it just makes your life so much less stressful about all the potentials. There's so much less worrying and wondering because you're like, "Oh, it just doesn't line up, so that's not right."
I really want to ask more about this and like hear more about that process of what that was like for you. If I heard you right earlier, you said you took some time to kind of identify this before you kind of jumped into what did that look like? Like, was that during college? When did you first get exposed to resources like this that kind of put you on the path? Because I think I agree with you. It's so important, and really does solve a lot of problems and addresses the root, if I'm hearing you correctly, and certainly something that I would say. Um, what is that like? Like for those listening out there, what is that process like, and how did you do it?
Well, I think part of it is the whole point is that it's personal to you.
Sure.
It's not formulaic. It's not gonna look like what it does for me. Um, but for me, it was starting to ask the question, and I probably started doing that around high school, and then my freshman year of college was really, like, searching through, "Okay, what am I here for? What am I supposed to be doing?" Um, and with that, I think the big thing there was just taking time and making space to ask that question and see what God says on that.
Hmm.
Because for me, it wasn't until I was, like, actually, like, making space and saying, "Hey, I'm gonna keep coming back in every day, making time in my day to be asking these questions," that I'm starting to get answers. And I think for me now especially, I'm so busy with important things and unimportant things that not ma if I hadn't made that space then, I would be so much harder to hear now and
Hmm.
to discern and to figure out what things are happening and what I should be doing and what I shouldn't be doing. Um, and so I think making that space is the thing that takes you to another level with
Hmm.
things, and it allows
Yeah.
you to get stability. But I remember it was, like, one of the most uncomfortable things because it was like nothing would happen, and you're trying to think of things and all this stuff, but it requires sitting there and waiting. So
Wow. Wow. Did the results surprise you along the way? Did kind of what you came to surprise you at all, or was it confirming, or what was that like?
I think for me, in a lot of ways, it was relieving because it
Okay.
was like, "Oh, this makes sense." And it's not all, oh, this and this are separate things that I'm trying to reconcile. It's like, oh, this gives language to everything.
Mm.
Um, and I think that that was so relieving. And I think the other part too is like the way that if God is as big as we think he is, he's going to be speaking through all these different things. So I remember just in professors and classes that were completely unrelated, it would just keep reaffirming that. I was like, wait a minute. Like just it would keep coming up, reaffirming this stuff as it was coming through this process of several months. And so it just made it more and more clear for me. Yeah.
Wow. Were there any types of assessments that you would do related to personality or kind of work aptitudes or anything like that in the process, or was it a little more organic than that?
I think for me, it was more organic. There were like obviously I've done all sorts of the different personality, strength
Hmm.
finder, disc, Myers-Briggs, all that stuff. Um, and there was value to it. And I think they affirmed some of these things, but I don't think that they replace you having to go out and ask, what is my purpose in this?
Sure, sure,
And what am I here for, you know? I think this the
yeah.
conversation that everyone either has to answer and have impact or has to avoid and just end up where they end up, you know? It's gonna be one of those 2 options.
That's really inspiring. Yeah. It reminds me of like if you aim for nothing, you'll hit it every time. That's what my parents always told me. And I think it's very true. And I think this is really, yeah, I'm glad that you brought this up and we were able to talk about this a little bit because I think uh, the target audience in this podcast and people I, hope to be able to share with is really Gen Z and the up and coming generation, below us. And um, yeah, I think there's a lot of people struggling with their identity right now, in a really profound way and trying to find that meaning that you need in order to make a good life. And it's very difficult. Um, and it does take a lot of like what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say is like patience and like waiting and silence and listening. And those
Making
things are just
space, yeah.
really hard, right? Really
Yeah.
hard to do in our culture right now. So good encouragement for those who might be listening. So bringing that back around to what I had originally asked, where we kind of jumped off into the identity stuff, was that the language that the helping others blossom, helping others in businesses blossom into their full potential? Was that the actual language that you came up with out of that process, or do you say it a little bit differently before maybe you started the business and you came up with that language? Does that make sense?
I would say it's doing that for people, and then the business thing was just natural of, "Okay, what does
Got
that
it.
mean in business?" And then here we go, and that's not very complicated. It's like, "Oh, well, that's what
Totally.
it is. Here we go."
Yep. 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 That's fantastic. Yeah, I had a conversation with somebody recently about that dynamic as well, where as an entrepreneur, oftentimes your business becomes kind of a mirror of who you are, and like a lot of the things of the business come right out of your own personal values, your own personal beliefs, your worldview, your life purpose, and I certainly have seen that. And even as I was trying to do some branding work recently in the last couple months, for me, it's been like I gotta go back to my own personal brand as kind of the beginning point of those conversations around the business. It's like, I think it does inform. And even if I don't directly make a tie, I cannot deny that it will have an effect. Like it will because I run the business or I'm starting the business, right? And so I think that's super, super powerful and
And
super
that's
important.
something that in the last year I've been unpacking a lot is
Okay.
the dysfunctions that I have as a person, the business also has.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I'm
Yeah.
a fool to think that there is a wall between those.
Sure. Sure.
So
What
if
has it
there's an
been like?
insecurity or a dysfunction in relationship that I have personally,
Mm.
likely that's everywhere in the business. And my team is getting that and they operate out of this and everything operates out of this. And I think you can look at any organization and you'll see like, oh, wait a minute. The visionary for this has this, and that's why we see this coming out over here.
Wow. Yeah. Good awareness and good for people to know. So true.
Yeah, but
Um,
sometimes it sucks because then you're like, oh, wait a minute. Then that means that this is yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
What has it been like? Have you gotten to the point yet where you have hired like fellow leadership team members and on your team, or is it still kind of like you're kind of the soul on the leadership team, at this point? I don't know how
Yeah,
your structure works, I guess, but
Yeah, so at this point, we've got like our architects and technical leads. We've got our
Mhm.
director of operations that runs
Okay.
all the different types of projects that are happening and things like that. And then I'm in the process of training some business development team to be more of the lead kind of roles in that.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
they're at different stages of the growing, and I've handed them the different hats.
Mhm.
I've worn most of them for part of the time, and then I've slowly been handing them off to, hey, now you're doing this. This is your role. And so
Right.
doing that kind of thing.
I just wonder what that's like in context of what we're talking about, when you introduce other personalities, but in a leadership role on a leadership team where you've got, all the different you've got all of a sudden it's not just you with uh your mirror into the business, but then the other people bring their leadership and by association, their personalities and their warts and their flaws and everything as well. And it becomes a little bit more complex in the best way possible, I'm sure, but
It's true.
uh,
And that professor that was my mentor in the business stuff, like he worked in military intelligence for years. He did
okay.
everything and had all sorts of stories. And he would say, any organization, once you get inside of it, he goes, I don't care whether it's a Microsoft, it's a tiny little startup, it's a church, or your family. Once you
Hmm.
get into it and see how it runs, you're like, this operates, I don't know how this shouldn't work. It operates in spite of itself. And any
That's
organization
great.
is if you haven't seen it yet, you just don't know it well enough yet.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
but every organization has, because it's exactly what you're saying. Everyone brings their things to the table, and it's that interaction of those things that create dysfunction, and it just happens, and it just changes how it looks. And
Sure.
and it is just the truth of like, right, healthy businesses are composed of healthy people. So the more healthy
Yep.
people you have, the healthier your business is. So
I love that. Yeah, it's good. Good word. I've heard you mention your mentor. I've heard you mention, the books that you were talking about with the identity stuff. What else would you add to that list for aspiring or new to the game entrepreneurs out there who are looking for some good resources to tap into, whether that be podcasts, books, consultants, peers? What would you say have been the most profound for you in addition to what you've already mentioned?
I think Living Fearless by Jamie Winship is the one that, like, whether you're going to be an entrepreneur or not, is the one that I'd say, hey, this is going to help you the most as a person, figure out
Okay.
like what you're doing here. Cause I think some people just are not created for that. And that's not a bad thing. But when they know what they are created for, it's going to make their life so much better because they can just do that and do it confidently. And
Yes.
some people are created for the entrepreneurship journey, and knowing that as well is also helpful. And
Hmm.
so I think that's a great one for it. Um, Otherwise, it's just the classics like E-Myth and stuff like
Hmm.
that. Having good mentors and people around you, trying things like when you run into people, get coffee, see if you click with them. If you don't, oh well. If you
Hmm.
do, then you just keep getting coffee every once in a while. So
Right. That's great. That's great. I'm gonna put that book on my list. I'm gonna have to follow up with you when I read it. But that I'm surprised I hadn't come across my field of view yet or my desk. It's like seems like it'd be one of the big ones out there, which maybe it is, and I'm just like completely oblivious. But that's great. I appreciate that. Um, say you were in a room with a bunch of aspiring entrepreneurs. Maybe you were back at Liberty, and you went back and you got to teach a class, with a bunch of people who were thinking like, man, this is going to be this is what I'm aspiring to. I'm aspiring to start a business. If you could speak to them for 30 minutes, I mean, give us an idea of what topics come to mind and why that you would speak on.
I'd probably start with the conversation we've just had where it's like, okay,
Sure.
identity, you got to figure out what you're called to. And then the next thing I would go into is, as you're looking at this, you got to look for people's problems and what their pain points are. And the best businesses come from the intersection of problems. So
Okay.
where this guy has a problem and this guy has a problem, and my solution can fix both of those, and that'll make your business successful in the next level. A lot of the people that I've interacted with, especially at school, were engineers, and the engineering tendency is to create a solution and then to just keep over engineering the solution and then try to find any problem that you can wedge it in. And that
Mm,
just creates bloated, bad designs because I came at it backwards. I should start with the problem and then look at all the potential solutions. And then once I've looked at all of them, then bring the solution that makes the most sense and then go with that one. I think it's so simple and so easy, but it's the hardest thing in the world to actually do because our mind immediately goes to, ooh, I could solve this other problem with it. And it's like, no,
Mhm.
this was the solution for this one. That problem requires a whole nother set of, is this the best problem? Or is this the best solution to the problem and all that?
Mhm. How much of it is, like, focus? How important is focus in that? It's like it sounds like you're saying, separate the problems out individually and say, this is what I'm focused on, and I'm gonna kind of put my blinders on, and I'm not gonna, get ADHD or whatever and look around. Um, how important has focus been for you guys in your business?
I think for gaining new clients, it's super important for defining, okay, who is the target that we're trying to go after? Who's too small and not worth it? Who's big enough that, like, hey, we really need to go there? Who are we never going to go for?
Sure.
And so that's been super helpful. And in the past year or two, when we've been really focusing on that, the number of clients that we have just exploded. The good clients that we have exploded. There's been several clients who are like, hey, this just doesn't make sense anymore. You might be happy, but we're not happy because this is not what we do, and we just said yes to too many things. So
Mhm.
having to fire clients and all that stuff is humbling and kind of scary sometimes, but necessary. So
Sure. Sure. That makes sense. Well, let's transition a little bit and talk a little bit about what you actually do and your expertise, because I know there's going to be a lot of, yeah, just there's a lot of business owners out there who are probably either maybe they have problems with their ERP, or they're considering getting our ERP, and probably for those who aren't familiar with it, it can kind of be an overwhelming topic, I'm assuming. um, Even just ERP in general, what it means. ERP being enterprise resource
planning,
program.
enterprise
Enterprise
resource
resource
planning.
planning. Yep. Okay. Um, what do you wish more business owners knew about enterprise resource planning systems?
That they have them,
Mm,
that it's a whole school of thought and there's a whole science around them that most people, so many businesses, it's like all of them end up somewhere, but few of them ended up somewhere on purpose. They were like, "Ooh, I need something that does accounting. Let me grab QuickBooks off the shelf. Ooh, I need something that tracks inventory. I got an Excel sheet going on over here. Ooh, I need something that does some HR management. I'm going to grab Bamboo from over here." And they grab all these different things. And when they do that, they may be even the best in whatever tool that they're trying to use it for,
uh-huh.
but they're thinking about the problem as all of these separate problems rather than my problem of I need to run a business that successfully delivers my real problem, solving, adding value to the customer, whatever they are, whether I make stuff for them, whether I service them, whatever it is. Um, and so you end up, rather than getting one ERP system like the big companies have, they end up with 5 little systems that make up your ERP, because enterprise resource planning includes your accounting. It includes your HR and personnel and time tracking and operations management. It includes your inventory management. And whether you manufacture things or you're just a contractor doing service-based stuff, you've got some assets you're managing, physical, personal, and time-wise. And so it's tracking all of that strategically, and usually I come at it with multiple separate solutions rather than thinking it's one system that should be solving it. And then you end up spending your time, like so many of my clients, where we start with them of, oh, I'm using email to get requests from clients. And then I have to go find that email and reply to it to get stuff to happen. And I miss emails, and then things fall through the cracks. I mean, I think so many businesses, if they just kept up with the people that reached out to them, they would be booming, incredible, successful businesses. They just can't
Sure.
keep up with and keep track of what's happening.
Hmm.
And so when it comes to enterprise resource planning, having tools that do that. And I think AI in some ways makes it easier and makes it worse at the same time,
Hmm.
because now I can suddenly give you a 50-page document of how we run things that you're not going to read, that I never actually read before I sent it to you. And now there's like everybody's making those. And so the information junk is coming out, and we all find ourselves asking that age old question, what is truth anymore? What is happening in this business? Where are the actual numbers? What is our actual process for this? And usually the answer is, I don't know.
Hmm.
So that's the biggest thing, is I think thinking about it as it's one system of how you run your operations. when it comes to sales, when it comes to if you're manufacturing, if it comes to sending out your technicians, if you're operations based business, field service, or something like that, it's one system. And I think that was the difference of my background in industrial engineering. Usually they say, this is how you make a factory efficient, this is how you make a TSA line efficient. And then my client that I was working with, we ended up just looking at their sales process and their engineering data the whole time. How do you be
Oh,
more efficient designing things and selling things? And it's like, oh, wait a minute. All these principles apply to that. And just as much as it's important to see how fast you can build something, how fast you sell it and how easy it is to sell is just as important. Because if that's terrible, then it doesn't matter how many I build if I can't sell them quickly and efficiently. And if
yeah.
I'm hiring a bunch of people to do things like go to your accounting system and invoice the person that you found in the CRM, got to copy all their information over there, and I'm spending minutes every day across dozens of clients, that ends up to hours and thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's just, those guys could have been having conversations with more clients. And
Yeah.
instead, they're just moving data. So,
That's great. Yeah. Um, ERP for me, and I have a obviously didn't even know that P didn't even know the P off the top of my head. I have a basic understanding of what they are, and as a accounting background, CPA myself, it's like um, the way that we usually look at it from the finance world is they start off with a basic accounting program, and then when they get big enough, they warrant a switch to an ERP. An ERP for me kind of denotes size and complexity. It's like size has increased enough or complexity has increased enough to where you need to come in with an ERP. For you, I'm really curious when you sit down with a random business owner, what are three of your most important like diagnostic questions that you would ask to determine if they're ready for an ERP or not? Or maybe you would just know, before you come in, but what are those characteristics of a business that you look for?
yeah, in one of that's what we've been really I've been training with our business development team on this and going through it. And I'm like, one of the qualifications that I think is so important that goes into your point is, are they growth oriented and they understand the importance of how they run their internal operations? I
Hmm,
think so many people just don't pay attention to that and they're just doing things. And if you're starting out, the easiest point to put in a ERP system is when you're starting, because
sure.
then you don't have to move it all over and pay someone thousands of dollars to move all your stuff over. And the analogy I give is it's like trying to switch what airplane you're flying in while you're midair, right? Like it's way easier when you're parked on the ground to be like, I'm going to get in this one and we're going to fly it where we need to go versus I'm flying and then they come up next to me and I'm trying to move stuff over. It's just crazy.
Hmm.
Um, but a lot of times people don't have that perspective, especially first time business owners. So I'm going to back up from them and kind of let them do their thing, make their mess, realize their mess, and then that's usually the point they bring us in. But if you understand the value of, I mean, again, in 2026, you really only need one system to run your whole business. And I don't care what that is, whether it's the Microsoft side of things or the software that we're partnered with. One person with one user, you can have full inventory management. You can have a full website that connects to it, that does your accounting, that does it all. And it's not like, oh, I get to this level and do that. I would argue you're going to buy QuickBooks here, you're going to get this CRM there, and you're going to piece it together. You're going to pay probably way more for the individual softwares. Then someday if you make it to that point to be big enough, you're going to realize I've made a mess. I've made Frankenstein. And then we're going to have to move everything over. Um, a lot of times the picture that we give people is an ERP system is like an aircraft carrier. It's nuclear powered. It'll run for years. You can have 5,000 people living on this thing, working on this thing. You can fly planes off of it. It can defend a whole continent. But most people treat their ERP system as if it's a barge. And so you got this guy in his little tugboat over here of an Excel sheet. This guy over here just bought smart sheets because he couldn't do it anymore in the system, and the system wasn't designed for him, or QuickBooks just wasn't keeping track of inventory, so they buy this over there. And everyone has their own little tugboat, and they're dragging this aircraft carrier behind them. And it's like, guys, this thing is nuclear powered, and it's spacious, and it has plenty of space for you if you knew how to use it and used it properly. But most
Sure.
people are like, I'm dragging a bunch of little barges around and it's just dead weight because these things should be planning. Again, that's the key word, planning. It should help you proactively be more effective rather than the thing that I'm dragging behind me. But most people treat it like they're dragging it behind them. Um, So
I,
that's
I love
something my soapbox that I get passionate about.
I love that analogy. Yeah, no, it's very it makes a lot of sense when you say it that way. So when you think about other implementation firms where you guys fall in the market, what makes 616 Solutions different than other ERP folks out there?
I would say what makes us different is that we're operations and process people first. And that's what we're looking to design. We're looking to design good processes, look through your thing. And before we actually build something for you, we're going to give you a map, like what you were saying about the flow charts
Right.
and those kind of things. And we're going to say, is this right? And you're gonna be like, well, actually, in this case, we do this, this, and this, and this. And then we're gonna ask you, do you need to do that? Why do you do that? And you're gonna be like, actually, no, we don't need to do that. So we're gonna try to cut your process and make that efficient first. And software and the ERP system is just a tool in our tool belt of making you more effective. So
Mm,
I would say what makes us different than other implementers is usually they're software guys that then figure out enough business and operations to then get you into their system.
sure.
Whereas we will come at you first with, I mean, we have clients that were like, hey, the software we're partnered with, that doesn't make the most sense. We're going to send you over here and this is what you're going to do. And we can still do some of the operations side and we're going to give you documentation. We're going to give you strategies to use, but then go over here and talk to these guys because that's going to be better for you. Um, because again, we're process people. Our goal is to make you effective first, and then software is just happens to be one of the tools we do that. And usually it's the right tool, but sometimes it's not. I mean, I've had businesses where I realize, oh, this whole business exists because the owner loves doing this one thing and he really doesn't care about being efficient. So I'm not going to fight him on it. I'm going to be like,
Right.
yeah, I'm going to try to make it as good as you can, but at the end of the day, and I'll tell people that are frustrated on his team, remember, you're in business because this guy loves to do this.
Mm,
And enjoy that. Have fun with it. Do the best you can, but don't be frustrated because remember that's his why. And if it doesn't match up with that, he's not going to care. And that's okay. Be the best at having the fun of this thing and you get paid for it. That's awesome. Enjoy it. But sometimes it's not the right solution.
sure, sure. I imagine that, you know, like businesses like that you're talking about, you know, or just comparing that type of business where someone's in it for the fun of it versus a business that's a very growth oriented and headed toward, you know, kind of a would you say that those businesses that you guys are focused on are more like enterprise value driven, you know, like they're looking to increase the valuation on their business as opposed to like I'm just going to have fun with this.
Those make decent clients. I think the ones we have the most fun with are the ones that really are passionate about whatever they're doing in business
Mhm.
and they're wanting to grow and they're wanting to reach more people and wanting to do it effectively. And so they're scaling because they believe in their why, not just the
Sure.
dollar side of things. They believe that the dollar is going to come as they're providing good value. And then where we come along is we say, okay, how do we make you spend the most time doing it, what it's you're in business and you care about and you're passionate about? That's going to be effective. And so then when they're on board with, yes, that's going to be effective and they want to scale, that's when we can really leverage it because then their life gets better and they're more efficient. And that's the biggest thing. When you're more efficient, you spend more time with people, you spend more time being productive, and people like that and their
Yep.
life becomes better. And when you have an organization that actually cares about that and values that, then it just compounds the growth where they find more people and then they find more clients, they find more internal people that are on board with that, and then it just compounds itself.
Mm,
So I would say our favorite clients are the ones that they also care about the culture, they also care about what they're doing, not just the money side of things.
right.
And when we give them the tools to make themselves more effective, because again, that problem that they're facing, all these small businesses are facing is I'm spending so much time on things that aren't what I'm in business for.
Right.
And it's just like, hey, let me give you tools that just reduce that and lets you spend more time on that. So,
Totally. Totally. Yeah. Passion with a growth orientation, you know,
right.
both at the same time. That's what I'm hearing you say. Okay. Thinking about the software, and this is the one I'm most familiar with because you and I had talked about this initially when we first met. But I know you do several different softwares. But Odoo was new to me when we first talked, and I'm assuming that it's still probably new to many people out there who are listening. I've seen some billboards around Chicagoland where I live, you know, and it must be getting some traction here in the U.S. more and more. I remember vaguely that you said it was a foreign company originally, maybe a European. Tell us a little bit more about the history of Odoo and why it's different than other ERP softwares out there. Why did you guys initially go toward it?
Yeah. So my story with all of this is I started in the Microsoft universe, and Microsoft has
Mm,
Dynamics 365. They have every add-on under the sun. If they didn't do it, they bought the company that did do it, and then they stuck it in there.
yep.
Um, and I got the start there, and I was like, wow, the capabilities of this stuff, the AI, the automations is amazing. And then I was looking at the bills of what these clients were paying for it, and I was like, oh my word, this is insane. If only there was something that did all this stuff that also made more sense. Because again, I bought Exapta in 2000 and something, and we stuck that in there to get our accounting feature, and then we bought this other thing and put that in there, and it was just, again, Frankenstein, but I'm paying for the
Mm,
Microsoft label now.
mm,
Um, and so I was like, I wish there was something that just made sense and was simple. And I was working with a startup that was like, hey, we want you to be kind of functioning as our internal CIO kind of person. Find us an ERP system that makes the most sense. We're not big enough for Microsoft, obviously. Look at a couple guys. And they said, hey, look at Odoo. And I found Odoo and I was like, wait a minute. It does everything that like I dreamed the Microsoft thing would do without the headaches that Microsoft has. And they charge a tenth of the price. And
mm,
so I got into it and I was like, okay, fine, we'll try this out for these guys. So I was a customer and I was like basically the guy leading it from the customer side for this install. And they were amazing. It did
mm,
everything that we needed to. And it comes from this open source background where it's your system. You can do whatever you want with it, but it's been around for 20 years. And so they've been reiterating year after year. And like when the new AI features come out, they're right on top of things. They put in useful AI features. I can ask it questions like, hey, how many outstanding invoices from this customer do I have? And it pulls that up and then it says, hey, you want me to send an email to them reminding them of these things? And it'll do that.
mhm,
Um, it'll do all the top of the line AI stuff that everybody else is charging crazy amounts for and agentic stuff as well. Um, but I got into it because it does everything any business would need. So I got
mm,
into it because I believed in the product so much. So we became a partner with them. And then that ended up just exploding in the business that we were doing. And so at this point, we're phasing out the Microsoft side of things because we're like, this is just, we can have so much more impact. Our customers will be so much happier doing this. And again, like you said, I've been all over the world, the Middle East, I've been in India and seen Odoo billboards. And it's just been in the last 2 years that they've really started a ad campaign targeting the US. But
mm,
the reality is, it is, I would say, almost every business type, whether you're a restaurant, whether you're a software services firm, whether you're a manufacturing firm, it runs your business simpler and more efficiently than anything else out there at a
wow.
ridiculously great value.
Mm,
Um, and again, our goal as our firm is, hey, let's have you spend less time and less effort doing things that are not core to your business. And it does that better than pretty much anything else I've seen out there. And then the way that it integrates with AI is just phenomenal. But I think that's one of the big things when it comes to today is you need two systems no matter what business you are. You need your source of truth, which is your ERP system, and that can't change. It has to be right. And then you need your AI tools that automate a bunch of those daily tasks. But if I just have
mm,
AI tools, then I'm going to get a bunch of drafts. I will get 20 drafts of a 50-page document and I'll have no idea what I need to do today. Or on
yep.
the other side of it, if I just have the software, then I'm the one doing all the work and it doesn't do any of the automation for me. And that's also not effective.
Mm,
So it brings those things together in a really unique way that services all of our clients in just incredible ways. And we've seen it so many times that like one department is like, ooh, we want this for inventory. And then they're like, wait a minute, it also keeps track of accounting while we're just doing our normal inventory stuff. That makes my life easier as an accountant. And then accounting is asking for it. And they don't charge you per module. They just charge you for per user. So if you're a
mm,
one person company that's just, this is what you do moonlighting, I mean, we've got clients that we work with on that kind of stuff, and it does their website for them. It does all of their billing and invoicing. It does their accounting for them. It helps them keep track of subscription-based stuff. It helps them keep track of inventory. And with that one license seat, they're getting the same thing that like KPMG and business units of Toyota run their whole plants off of.
wow.
And so it's just an amazing software. And I love their pricing model because it's based on you. As you grow, we grow with you. They charge you more the more people you have. The more people you're servicing, the more they charge you. But I've got startups right now that I'm working with where I'm like, hey, you just have one or two seats right now. And as you get contracts and hire more people, the stuff and the processes you set up for just you are going to scale amazingly. So
Mhm,
that's my story of getting into it. That's why I'm passionate about it is I was a customer first and I was like, wow, I believe in this stuff so much. I want to become the guy that helps other people with this particular tool.
Yeah, yeah. That's really cool, and a good reminder to me to look, another, we need to push a pin in that as well to come back to it, offline, for my own, business ventures and what have you. But, um, I'm curious, being also, and this is gonna come out of the accounting space as well, but there are accounting firm specific type of solutions, right? That for firms under a certain value, a certain revenue range, the small firm vibe, like there's a lot of hype about them. There's a lot of like people who are really excited about this or that. And it sounds from what I'm hearing you say is you found that Odoo really is a great general tool that really can run pretty much any business under the sun. Um, how would you talk to somebody who's a little bit skeptical of a generalist solution versus a hyper specific to my niche kind of solution? Like how would you weigh the pros and cons in a sales conversation with that?
Well, first, it completely depends on who you are and how
Sure.
old you are and what industry you're in. Because the conversation I'm going to have with an old manufacturing guy that's running out of Excel is going to be very different than the
Yeah.
conversation that I have with someone who's trying to start their own business. Um, I think the biggest thing I would say, though, is in 2026, we're well beyond the days of custom software for this that it does what you need it to do and I use it how I want it to. We live in this AI world where if it doesn't do what I need it to do, it should be able to adapt to do what I need it to do very quickly.
Yeah.
And if
Wow.
your tools don't do that, again, it's that whole idea that like software as a service needs to be so adaptable to me that again, I can design the most efficient process and then the tool supports that
Hmm.
rather than here's the solution. And again, it gets back to exactly what we were saying at the beginning. Usually, software as a service is here's the solution, jam it into your problem, rather than
Yes. Yeah.
a solution needs to be what is your process and what are you doing and what makes you different, and let's mold your solution to that. And that's what Odoo does amazingly well. With no coding background, you can edit workflows, you can edit forms, you can edit and make automations that Microsoft just charges you crazy amounts. And even things in Microsoft, I'm going to have to code some of it because they're just that behind in some of these things. But with
Hmm.
Odoo, I, as a non technical user, can adapt this to me. And that's where we as a partner come in because, again, with great power comes with great responsibility. You've got a very big chance of, with that power, making a mess if you're not careful.
Sure.
Uh, so having an outside person that can say, okay, let me map out what you're doing from an outside, let you confirm that, and then let's map this to you is very helpful. But in 2026, I think the requirement should be it makes me more effective and it does everything I need it to do and is adaptable to that and integrates with the AI on that. And I
Yeah.
think most people are like, oh, yeah, it has AI. I can ask it support questions that I could have asked ChatGPT on, right? Like, that's not AI. That's not adaptable to what you're trying to do. Um, and
The
that's where I
way that
think, yeah, go ahead.
No, no, finish up. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Well, what I was going to say is that so many companies are just, they have that legacy software mindset of I buy the tool and this is what it does and I buy it to do this rather than let me think about what I'm in business for and let me just do that effectively. And what would it take to just make that easy? What would it take that someone fills out a form on my website? It goes through the sales process. It sends a quote to them. They purchase it online. Then it sends it automatically to my field service person to go out and deliver it. And if we need to make something in the factory for it, it automatically connects that sales order. Like those things just moving through your whole company with the data and then the accounting just happening without you even thinking about it. That should be what your metric is.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I've got the accounting guy comparing the metric of, does it help me get ready to file my taxes as effectively as possible? And then you've got this guy over here, does it as effectively as possible help me manage inventory? And the question you should be asking is, does it make me run most efficiently at what I'm here to do?
Yeah.
That's the big picture question. And I think it's right. Like you got to ask the why. What's your why for all of this? And
Okay.
every department needs to know that and think about what's happening above upstream for me, downstream for me. And does it also make their lives better? Or is I just saved half the time and now I made their job 4 times longer? Wonderful.
Yep. 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 Well, I think the way you frame that is pretty profound, honestly, because it makes the niche specific ERP system that I have been exposed to in the accounting world, as much as it would identify some unique pain points and probably be a great fit. What you're saying is Odoo might be actually better than that because Odoo is fully customizable, whereas that solution is going to be very well versed in accounting, but there's still going to be ways where it's going to be square peg round hole, or like trying to fit their mold into your problem, even if you work a little different than the average accounting firm. And what I hear you saying is that's Odoo's superpower is forget out of the box solution. Let's just build it, kind of thing. Um, I'm assuming there's got to be some limitations there. There's got to be some fine print on what Odoo can do, but the way that you're saying it, it doesn't sound like much. Sounds like it's highly customizable.
Yeah, and I would say like the question on that one comes down to not can you do it, but is it worth doing it? Because some of these
Sure.
things are like, okay, I would customize it so much, and then it's going to be a disaster. And fine, go
Okay.
with these guys, go with God. It'll be easier with their out of the box thing because it does your strange situation.
Yeah.
Um, but for me, if I'm sitting down with a person that they have a vision for operations, they see the actual problem of I'm spending this much time on logistical things that are wasting my time, that are wasting the time of my team, and I really care about growing. Almost every time when I sit down with someone that is in that situation, they're sold before I know this is going to be a sale. I know they're going to go for it because
Right.
that's what they want.
Right.
But it's the people that are like internal politics is that's the thing that keeps you from doing this or just the fear of changing stuff. But again,
Yeah.
it'll do everything you need it to on whatever level you're on.
Wow. Okay. You already spoke to AI in several answers here so far, but yeah, broadly speaking, in terms of even the way that you guys are offering services to your clients, how is AI in the 2026 changing the landscape of your offerings? I think I noticed in your website, what I'm probably referencing most here is noticing on your website that there was Odoo, there was Microsoft, and then there was like a third category where it's just like building a solution in AI, from what I could understand briefly in reading it.
Yeah, and usually that one brings us back to Odoo because we're like, hey,
Got it.
actually this does
Okay.
it all.
Cool.
Um,
Okay.
and a lot of that is conversation pieces, and we'll probably be taking the Microsoft thing off sooner than later.
Sure.
Um, and putting that with process-based design because that's what we're doing for a lot of people is that. But for that particular thing, when it comes to AI, everything I've done up to this point is AI. I really
Yep.
am not that concerned with technical expertise of my team, even the technical people. Our technical interviews are I'm going to give you a technical task in Odoo that I know you've never seen before, you never know how to do. Screen share and show me what your AI of choice is, and I want to see the conversation that you have to get to the solution
I
because I
love
know
it.
it'll get them to the solution. And
Wow.
I want to see how fast can you solve it so that my team is people that can effectively use AI to then design processes for people that they use AI to be more effective in what they're doing. But I think if you're not doing that, you're going to get behind.
What a take on AI. You're the first person who has given me that kind of granularity on how you hire and think about the AI kind of workscape as it's becoming. That's really good. I mean, I think people are going to be really interested in that. What if interviews were just based on how well you can use an LLM? That's crazy. That's
But
the
here's the
future.
thing, I see your thought process with
Right.
that.
Right.
I see what you're thinking. I see what you understand, what you don't understand. I see it
Yep.
all.
Yep. And it makes total sense. I'm seeing the logic, very clearly on why you would do that. Because I think the future, and I've said this a couple times, it's like the future does belong to the people who can ask the right questions, know their limitations, know how to ask for help, and ultimately in your business, as in accounting in many ways, it's like it's about how you think, not what you know, It seems like a lot of it is. So um that's really cool. That's something to store away for people listening. Another question on AI, and you also have alluded to this, but I want to hear you answer it directly. The idea of bolt on versus AI native. I've heard these terms kind of thrown around, and I know Odoo's been around quite a long time. You mentioned how it's um, just as good as if it was built on AI, which is really cool. How do you talk about those words, or even do those words even mean anything to you at this point? I don't know. They're probably hard to pin down sometimes, but
Well, my
have
first
you
thing
heard
is
people
I'm
mention that?
asking you, what do you mean by that?
Sure. Yeah.
Because again, I've heard those terms thrown around a bunch, and so I'm like, okay, what do you want to talk about with that?
I'll be
Um,
glad. I'll be glad to give you an example. Yeah, I probably could have started with the example for sure. I think there's two ERP systems that I've been exposed to recently in the accounting space. Okay, and maybe they're branded accounting and their rest of their ERP functions are like mid. I don't really know, but NetSuite being a legacy player, and then Rillet being an up and coming um, quote unquote AI native like platform that is ERP and advertises that the close time for their books is like almost instantaneous, and then the research features with AI are just um, world class, and the report generation, all these things that it's built on. And what they argue, I think, in thinking about that, and even tools like a ramp versus a bill.com, like there's some finance tools out there as well for bill pay and credit card spend. Some of these tools like NetSuite and bill.com have been around for a long time, and what they argue is their AI, they're catching up to the AI um, kind of uh, revolution, and that looks like bolting on AI products. Whereas the products that have been built in the last year or two, they have existed in the AI field, and somehow that gives them a leg up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the thing I would say is that question is so nuanced because it depends on the company, it depends on the
Sure.
culture and who's leading it, because
Okay.
there are legacy people that have adapted so well. Um, and then there are legacy people that have just botched it and messed it up and it's terrible.
Yep.
Um, I think at the end of the day with all this stuff, you got to ask the question, was it useful? Did it really save me time along the whole big picture?
Yep.
So I think when I'm thinking through some of this stuff, it may do the accounting piece amazingly well. And that's what I caution some of my accounting friends and some of my CPA friends and some of the CPA firms that we're partnering with is you may have the easiest job now on the planet and you are cruising, but inventory tracking and that process that most of the time is spent in is now suffering because you
Mm.
went with a system that was designed for accounting. So I think asking the question of what is the system designed to do, and then where does it make sense to do it?
Yep.
I see so many AI things that it's just like, I'm never going to use that. It's just stuck on there. And usually those are the legacy guys. But we're getting to this point, I think, where your ERP system needs to be almost like a Walmart, where it's a combination of shelves and storage space that both people and DoorDash and Walmart Plus shoppers and all sorts of people, like it's just a warehouse at this point. And it's how easy can we get in and get out all those different types of people in a way that they're not going to run into each other. They're going to be able to get what they need out of this. And we're at
Mm.
that point where I need an AI agent to be able to go into the warehouse of data, mess with the truth in a way that's not going to mess it up. And
Right.
then also a person's going to be able to go in there and do that. And I think that's the standard you got to look at. And it has to go case by case. And I always am a big proponent for what are you in business for? And does it push you towards that goal as a holistic picture? Or is it just, yeah, it made your accounting more efficient, but now my expense tracking because of this accounting tool that I just purchased that is AI reconciliation on this piece means that when I'm trying to actually keep track of what inventory I have, I can't receive it easily anymore because now I got to receive it here on this system to match the bill. And then on my inventory side of things, I got to scan the barcode of this thing and they never match and they never will. And I've just introduced a new problem. Right. And so making sure that the AI automations are like, can it go into this data warehouse of the data of my company and the AI automations are doing what they need to be doing well and they're not running over or erasing things that the person's doing and all of this is working together effectively. So
Mm.
when it comes to the bolt on or the native, I think it really, you should be asking the why on every one of these things. You should
Yep.
be asking, what are we trying to do in this department? And then what are we trying to do as a whole? Is it helping this department and is it helping the whole? If the answer is yes to both of those, it's probably an amazing tool. If it's the answer to yes is one of those or the other one, you got to be careful. There's probably a better tool out there that's going to do that.
Makes sense. Okay.
Another thing I'd say on the ERP and AI side of things is so many people want to throw AI at something that is just a simple automation flow. So if I took this
Yes.
thing at this point in the CRM and then I kicked together a project in our project management tool, that would do exactly what you needed without any of this AI language or branding. And that's one thing I'll definitely tell people is you don't need AI for this. You
Hmm.
just need an automation. And does your system support if then logic for automation? That's why Zapier has been so effective and amazing in a lot of ways. And that's why Power Automate on the Microsoft side. But it's, again, another tool. And if I think we're getting to that point where your tool should be able to do those kind of automations by you yourself
Yeah.
internally without having to do all sorts of other stuff. And then you add AI as you need. That's, I think, a big thing.
Hmm. It's a good distinction there too. Yeah, helpful. AI versus automation. Cool. Um, yeah, getting to kind of the future of the industry and thinking about our audience as we speak about these things too, and young people who might be looking at what you're doing and thinking, or even how you described how your brain works and going, man, I think I'm kind of like Joshua in this way or that way, and I think like maybe this could be where I plug in someday as an entrepreneur, in a firm like yours. Um, what do you think the future is of the industry? What would you tell a young person who may be interested in pursuing your path? Like, obviously for you, I know that it was so providential, and I know there was so much just along the way that was just, like I just kind of ended up here, just accidentally. I don't know. Would you have anything to say though to someone who's like coming to you and saying, "Hey, I'd love to do what you do. What does it look like to kind of go that path?"
I think the biggest thing I would say is whatever you're in, serve what's in front of you and
Mm,
understand what's happening. I've had so many conversations. Like one of our team members right now worked at this wild manufacturing plant and they're very dysfunctional, very old school. She's the person that makes it all happen. And she's just been wrestling with their ERP system. And as I'm talking with her and kind of taking her to that next level as she's working with more and more high profile clients with us, her experience of what she dealt with as a user of the system
yep.
is such valuable experience. And most people are like, I just do this and this happens. It's like, okay, why is this happening? What's going on above stream from me, downstream from me? Why are we doing it this way? Do we
Mm,
need to be doing it this way? Like just understanding and having awareness of the system that you're in. You're in many systems, whether it's friend groups, whether it's products you've purchased, whether it's a job, all of those things are just systems. And that's where if you're wanting to get into this space in especially in the AI thing, your ChatGPT history should be full of conversations of why does this software design this way when it doesn't make sense, or when this how does this happen? And then it says, oh, well, it was designed because of this and because of this, and you got to think about downstream from you. This is happening. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Like it should just be tons of those conversations
mm-hmm. That
about
makes
the
total sense.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Cool. Yeah. In making it a successful firm and moving forward, not just in the the technician role, but in an entrepreneurial role. From your perspective, in 4 years now, what does it take to run a successful firm?
I mean, I think that's gonna be the thing that we're all gonna see if we're gonna we all had the answer to or not, right? Like
Amen. Amen. That's
in
so
4
true.
years we're gonna find out.
Yeah.
Um, I think the biggest thing is gonna be that ability to problem solve and understand the system. It goes
Yeah.
back to the heart of my question of, I know you've never seen this problem before. I wanna see how you're gonna approach it and how well you can grasp the system as a whole and what's happening as
Hmm.
quickly as possible. And so just the width, I think in a lot of ways, it used to be the depth of your particular experience.
Yep.
But I think it's getting to the point where it's the guy with the width of experience that knows how to get the tools deep in all of the areas are going to be the guys that are successful.
Yep.
Um, I've had mentors say that most CEOs seem like they're a mile wide and an inch deep,
Yep.
but the great CEOs are a mile wide and 5 miles deep, and you just don't see it because they're so effectively moving between their depth. And I think
Wow.
that's what AI is going to allow everybody to be that potential. Is not just the guy that had an engineering degree, then got the MBA, then spent some time in finance, then moved over to software, and then now he's the CEO because he has a depth in all of these things that you don't see because you just see him operating on this really narrow layer across everything.
Hmm.
Everybody's going to have the potential to go a mile deep in software, a mile deep in operations, a mile deep in all this. And it's the people that can context switch and understand systems that I think are really going to be effective in this world.
Ah, I love that answer. Yeah, that's really good. And what I'm hearing you say, and maybe this has come through in so many different aspects of this conversation, but just the importance of being a curious person.
Yeah.
Like that's what I hear you saying, and who I understand you to be after this conversation is just like curiosity just oozes out of you. And I think that's got to be one of the things you would counsel people to do is just like increase your curiosity. Yeah, I mean, if you want to be successful, increase your curiosity. How do you think those CEOs got 5 miles deep and they ended up still a mile wide? Just because they're insatiable curiosity, I suppose, you know? Do you have any thoughts on, yeah, anything to add there on
Yeah,
curiosity?
I laugh on that one because at the end of the year, ChatGPT released their like ChatGPT end of year stats. And I
Okay.
was looking at mine, and sometimes I'm like, what did I even spend my time on sometimes? I wish I was more effective at time management. Um, but then I was looking at it, and I use ChatGPT more than 99% of all global users. I had
Oh,
like
wow.
20,000 messages I had sent it over the year and 5,000 different conversations. And I'm thinking back, and it's like, if you look through that, it's going to be random things like, how does this work in the financial industry? Or I'm at the airport and I'm seeing this happen. Why does that happen that way? And it's like, it's literally exactly what you said, curiosity. And we're living in this age where it's not even like, I don't even have to Google it. It'll tell me the answer. I just have to ask the
Right.
question. So
Wow.
having the
Yeah. Yeah.
curiosity and do that, and then it's being able to then file that away for then I can be like, oh, well, that's the history of that. And now I'm asking this question and I see how it relates to that.
That's good,
So
Joshua. That's good. Yeah. I love that. So what do you see as the next? You've been 4 years with 616 Solutions. What's the next 4 years look like? What's next in your vision?
yeah, I think the next thing that we really want to do is partner with companies that are doing parallel stuff that are looking for our ideal client and reach those ideal clients and kind of service them as well. So accounting firms, marketing firms, and then I think the real dream with this stuff is we really have good abilities to level up people's operations. So I
Mm,
think the next people that we're wanting to target are the guys that are purchasing companies and flipping them,
yep.
because this just the value add of, hey, you're buying this company. They might use paper. They might use some goofy system. I can save you money and make them more effective and give you complete visibility in what they're doing of what you just purchased. And if you're going to sell the company, it's worth more. If you're going to scale the company, it's going to be able to do that. So I want to partner with those guys. And I think long term, someday I want to do that because I
Yeah.
think there's only so much that as the account or as the outside advisor you can do. And I think that's at this point, our biggest frustration is we told them what they needed to do. And then they took 20% of it and ignored half of it. And then the other 30% they said they would do eventually. And now they're questioning why things are falling apart. It's because the 50% you didn't ignore it.
Right.
Um, so the ability to have the say in those processes, I think we want to partner with people that we can actually get that authority. And so like we've been talking to some guys that are doing acquisitions of companies and they're like, oh yeah, once you get in there, you'll have the authority to be able to say, this is how things work. Cause that's what we
Right.
want. And we're like, well,
Right.
then that takes us to a whole another level of being able to impact people's lives for good if we can actually have the authority to change what needs to be changed. Because at that point, is not arguing with the finance guy that he should want this tool. It's, hey, this is going to make everybody's life easier. Let's all get on board with this. And if you don't want to, that's where we're heading.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so that's what I'm excited for. That's what I think we're working to get to that point, and we're building those partnerships now, and just looking for more people that are lining up with that.
Yeah. And almost like 616 Solutions becomes private equity at some point, almost.
Honestly, yeah, or the best friend of private equity, almost like private
Right.
equity's private assassins or whatever, like just special op going in, figuring out, make everybody's lives better, and just increase the value exponentially of whatever you
Yep.
just bought. Because I think
Wow.
so many, I've seen this with private equity. Like that's something I'm coming across on the software side. Private equity buys a software, they're just trying to get a return on their investment. And then everybody that's using that software is just stuck on terrible systems because now they don't care about investing in the tool. I
Yeah.
think you can exponentially grow stuff if you give the right tool to the company you bought. So
Mm,
and that's a whole another discussion that goes
yeah.
down another road, but
I love that. I love that. That's really cool. Yeah. The last question I love to ask my guests as we wrap up today is kind of a historical view and then a future view. And it could be personal, it could be business, it could be a mix of the two. But what are you most proud of as you look back on your life so far? I know we're both young guys, so you know there's not tons to look back on. But what are you most proud of? And then what are you most excited about for the next year as we look just in the next year in particular?
I think what I'm most proud of is the people that I've worked with and their growth that I've seen them have. Like
Mm,
at this point, I've got an amazing team that I've just seen them grow so much from. Like I just think back to my first conversation with these individual people, and then I think about what they're doing now and where they're at. And then like I've gotten asked to be in people's weddings that are on my team, and I was like, I didn't even think we had this much impact. But it's like, oh, you had such an impact on my life, and so being able to see how they grew professionally, personally, and all this stuff, and then just seeing all the things that they're doing now, whether it's this guy's still on my team or the guys that have done other things. Now they're working at Space Force. I mean, we've got guys in Air Force Cyber Command. We've got people working at their family businesses, running
Wow.
those things, and just they're taking all this stuff, and they'll call me back every once in a while being like, hey, remember when this happened and I learned this? Now we're using it here. And so that
Hmm.
that I think is something that I'm very proud of, and it's such a blessing to see. And then what I'm most excited for is we're just in a new phase with some of these bigger partnerships where
Hmm.
there's some startups that we're working with that really could scale really big in the next couple months here.
Yep.
There are some partners that are like acquiring companies and doing stuff that we're working to put some of their partnership agreements together that I think is going to take our impact to another level. And grow the company and all the size of that stuff to another level. So I'm super excited about that. Super excited to see where that goes.
Wow. Well, I'll be really excited to continue to follow along and continue to yeah, nurture our relationship. And it's such a privilege and pleasure to have you on today. So thank you so much, Joshua, for making the time.
Yeah, of course. This was a lot of fun. I always appreciate being able to do this.
That's great. Well, until next time.